You're watching a man's career, reputation, and life fall apart in real time. You just don't know whose yet. On a quiet afternoon, Officer Brad Thompson made a decision every cop fears. He chose the wrong target. He saw a black man in a luxury car and assumed he was a criminal. He had no idea he was staring at one of the FBI's most decorated agents, Special Agent Jamal Hayes. What happens next is not just a misunderstanding. It is a brutal collision of ego and justice that ends with a twist so shocking it brought an entire police department to its knees. Watch closely. The hunter is about to become the hunted. The engine of the black Chevy Tahoe ticked softly as it cooled, the only sound in the otherwise silent cul-de-sac of Sycamore Lane. It was an affluent neighborhood in the Chicago suburb of Oak Brook. Manicured lawns cut with geometric precision, American flags drooping lazily on porch poles, and the kind of silence that cost a fortune to buy. Inside the Tahoe, Jamal Hayes sat with the stillness of a predator waiting for the wind to change. He adjusted the cuffs of his suit jacket, Italian wool tailored to hide the Sig Sauer P226 holstered under his left arm. On the passenger seat lay a folder stamped confidential, a lukewarm cup of coffee, and a pair of high-powered binoculars. Jamal, known as Jay to the very few friends he kept outside the bureau, kept his hands visible. He wasn't here for a drug bust or a bank robbery. He was here for something much harder to prove. White-collar corruption involving city zoning permits, organized crime, and money laundering. The target was a man named Robert Hargrove, a city councilman living 3 doors down. Jay had spent his career in the FBI, moving from the chaotic gang task forces to the surgically precise white-collar crimes division. He knew how to wait. Patience was the primary weapon of his trade. He took a sip of the coffee, grimacing at the temperature, and scanned the street. A delivery truck rumbled past. A woman walked a golden retriever. Normal, boring, perfect. Then the rearview mirror caught a flash of white and blue. A police cruiser from the Oak Brook Police Department turned slowly onto the street. It didn't pass. It crawled. The shark-like nose of the Ford Explorer dipped as the brakes engaged, coming to a halt 2 car lengths behind Jay's Tahoe. Jay let out a long, weary sigh through his nose. He knew the drill. He was a black man sitting in a tinted SUV in a neighborhood where the demographics skewed heavily white. He had hoped the generic government plates would be enough of a "do not disturb" sign, but today was going to be complicated. He watched the mirrors. The cruiser's doors opened. 2 officers. The driver was a wall of a man, Officer Brad Thompson. Jay didn't know his name yet, but he knew the type. Thompson walked with his chest puffed out, thumbs hooked near his belt, his sunglasses reflecting the suburban glare. He was heavy-set but muscular with a thick mustache. His body language screamed territorial aggression. The passenger was younger, female, Officer Emily Carter. She looked fresh out of the academy, her uniform slightly too big, her hand resting nervously near her radio. She trailed Thompson by a few steps, glancing around the street as if expecting an ambush. "Here we go," Jay whispered to himself. He kept his hands visible, resting them at the 10 and 2 positions on the steering wheel. He lowered the driver's side window as Thompson approached. Thompson didn't say hello. He didn't ask how Jay was doing. He leaned down, placing a meaty hand on the roof of the Tahoe, and peered inside through his aviators. "License and registration," Thompson barked. No preamble. Jay turned his head slowly. He kept his voice calm, the practiced baritone of a man who had negotiated with hostage takers. "Good afternoon, officer. Is there a problem?" "I said license and registration," Thompson repeated, louder this time. He leaned in further, sniffing the air inside the car like a bloodhound. You don't live here. I'm working, Jay said calmly. I'm a federal agent. My credentials are in my inside jacket pocket. I'm going to reach for them now. This was the protocol. Declare. Describe. Move. Don't you move a muscle. Thompson's hand dropped to his holster. The snap of the retention strap being thumbed off echoed in the quiet street. I didn't ask for a life story. I asked for ID. Get out of the car. Jay frowned. This was escalating faster than usual. Officer, I am identifying myself as a special agent with the FBI. I am on an active surveillance operation. If I get out of the car, I break cover. Break cover? Thompson laughed, a harsh barking sound. You're sitting in a suspicious vehicle in a high-priority neighborhood idling. We've had reports of break-ins. You fit the description. Jay knew for a fact there had been no recent break-ins in this zip code. He checked the crime stats daily. Which description is that, officer? The one that says black male in a car. Thompson's face reddened instantly. The vein in his neck bulged. He ripped the door handle. It was locked. Open this door or I break the window, Thompson shouted. Officer Carter stepped forward tentatively. Brad, maybe let him show the ID first. He said he's a Fed. Shut up, Carter, Thompson snapped without looking at her. He's stalling. He's probably ditching dope or a piece right now. Open the door. Jay calculated his options. If he refused, Thompson would smash the window, drag him out, and the scene would be even bigger. If he complied, he lost control of the situation. But he saved the taxpayer the cost of a window and potentially saved his own life if Thompson was as trigger-happy as he looked. Okay, Jay said, his voice dropping an octave, becoming cold and hard. I am unlocking the door. I am stepping out, but you need to listen very carefully to what I tell you next. Get out! Jay unlocked the door. Before he could even swing it fully open, Thompson grabbed him by the lapel of his expensive suit and yanked. Jay stumbled as he was hauled onto the asphalt. He was tall and in peak physical condition, a former college linebacker, but he allowed himself to be moved. Resistance now would give Thompson the excuse he was desperately fishing for. Hands on the hood now! Thompson slammed Jay against the hot metal of the Tahoe. The impact rattled Jay's teeth, but he didn't grunt. He spread his legs and placed his hands on the roof, fingers spread. My badge, Jay said clearly, speaking loud enough for the body cam on Thompson's chest to pick it up perfectly, is in my left interior pocket. My service weapon is holstered under my left arm. Do not reach for it unless you want a federal inquiry on your desk by morning. Gun! Thompson shouted, ignoring the context. He's got a gun. Carter, cover me. Carter drew her weapon, but pointed it low, looking terrified. Brad, he told you he has it. He's complying. He's armed and dangerous. Thompson jammed his knee into the back of Jay's knee, forcing him to buckle. Jay went down to one knee, grit biting into his suit trousers. Thompson grabbed Jay's right wrist and twisted it behind his back, forcing it up near his shoulder blades. The pain was sharp, rotator cuff tearing sharp. Jay gritted his teeth, his eyes narrowing. Officer Thompson, Jay said, reading the nameplate now that it was inches from his face. You are making a mistake that you cannot fix. Check my pocket. Look at the credentials. I'm checking for my safety first. Thompson patted Jay down aggressively. He found the gun. He ripped the Sig Sauer from the holster and skidded it across the pavement, scratching the finish of a government-issued firearm. That is federal property, Jay stated. His voice was becoming robotic, detached. He was memorizing every second. Excessive force. Failure to verify credentials. unlawful detention. Thompson finally reached into the jacket pocket. He pulled out the leather wallet. He flipped it open. The gold shield of the FBI gleamed in the sunlight. The photo ID next to it clearly read, Jamal Hayes, Special Agent. Thompson stared at it. For a second, just one heartbeat, the silence returned. Carter leaned in. Seeing the badge, her eyes went wide. "Brad," she whispered, "that's real. That's a real badge. Let him up." But Thompson's ego was a runaway train. He had already committed. He had shouted. He had used force. And neighbors were starting to come out onto their porches. Mrs. Harrington from down the street was holding her iPhone up. A landscaping crew across the street had stopped their mowers and were watching. If Thompson backed down now, he looked like a fool. If he doubled down, he could claim the badge looked fake. He could claim Jay was resisting. In Thompson's mind, the truth was malleable. Thompson snapped the wallet shut and shoved it into his own pocket. "Fake," Thompson announced loud enough for the neighbors to hear. "Looks like a forgery to me. You get these online?" Jay's blood ran cold. This wasn't just incompetence anymore. This was malice. "You know that is legitimate. Call your supervisor. Call the field office. The number is on the back of the card. I'm taking you in for impersonating a police officer, resisting arrest, and possession of an illegal firearm," Thompson said, pulling his handcuffs. Click, click. The steel bit into Jay's wrists. "You are under arrest," Thompson sneered, leaning close to Jay's ear. "You think a suit and a fake badge make you untouchable? Not in my town, boy." The racial undertone wasn't subtle. It was a sledgehammer. Jay stood up as Thompson hauled him by the chain of the cuffs. He turned to face the officer. Jay didn't look defeated. He looked like a judge passing a sentence. "Officer Carter," Jay said, locking eyes with the rookie, "you are witnessing a felony. Deprivation of rights under color of law, Title 18, United States Code, Section 242. If you do not intervene, you are an accessory." Carter flinched. She looked at Thompson. "Brad, we should run the badge number. Dispatch can verify it in seconds." "I said get him in the car." Thompson shoved Jay toward the cruiser. Jay didn't fight. He walked with dignity, despite his hands being bound behind him. He sat in the back of the cramped plastic seat of the police interceptor. The smell of stale vomit and disinfectant filled his nose. Thompson slammed the door. Inside the car, trapped behind the cage, Jay took a deep breath. He closed his eyes. He wasn't praying. He was counting. He knew something the officer didn't. Jay wasn't just on a stakeout. He was part of a coordinated takedown. His partner, Special Agent Ethan Riley, was 2 streets over in a surveillance van, and Jay was wearing a wire. Everything that had just happened, the racial slur, the dismissal of the badge, the refusal to check credentials, had been recorded and transmitted live to the Chicago field office. Jay looked at the dashboard of the cruiser. "Mike, Ethan," Jay whispered, knowing the microphone taped to his chest beneath his shirt would pick it up. "Come get me and bring the cavalry." Outside, Thompson was strutting. He was playing to the audience. He walked over to Mrs. Harrington, who was still filming. "Nothing to see here, folks. Just taking some trash off the street," Thompson boomed. He picked up Jay's gun from the pavement, handling it carelessly by the trigger guard. A massive safety violation, and tossed it onto the passenger seat of his cruiser. He turned to Carter. "You drive. I'll write up the booking sheet on the way. We're going to charge him with everything we can think of. Disorderly conduct, assault on an officer." "He didn't touch you, Brad," Carter said, her voice trembling. "He thought about it." Thompson grunted. "Get in." They got into the car. Thompson turned around. grinning at Jay through the cage. "Comfortable back there. Don't worry. The county lockup is worse." Jay looked at him, his face completely expressionless. "You don't have long, officer." "Until what?" Thompson laughed. "Until your life ends," Jay said softly. "Not your heartbeat, but your life as you know it." Thompson rolled his eyes. Yeah. Tell it to the judge." He slapped the dashboard. "Let's go, Carter." Carter put the car in drive. She released the brake, but before she could touch the gas, a siren chirped. Not the wail of a distant ambulance, but the sharp, aggressive whoop-whoop of a federal siren. A massive black SUV, identical to Jay's but with grille lights flashing red and blue, squealed around the corner, blocking the street in front of them. Then another came from behind, boxing them in. Then a third. Tires screeched. Doors flew open. Men in tactical gear with FBI emblazoned in bright yellow on their backs poured out. They didn't look like local cops. They moved with the terrifying speed of a SWAT team. Thompson froze. His hand went to his door handle, but he didn't open it. "What is this?" he stammered. "Who are these guys?" Jay leaned forward against the cage. A small, cold smile finally touched his lips. "That," Jay said, "is the twist, the silence of Sycamore Lane, previously disturbed only by the chirping of birds and the drone of lawnmowers, was now annihilated by a cacophony of shouting, slamming doors, and the crackle of high-frequency radios." Officer Brad Thompson sat frozen in the driver's seat of his cruiser. His brain, usually quick to categorize the world into threat or civilian, was misfiring. The visual data in front of him didn't make sense. Police officers were the predators in this ecosystem, not the prey. Yet 3 black Chevrolet Suburbans had just executed a hard box maneuver on his vehicle, a tactic usually reserved for terrorists or cartel leaders. "Brad!" Officer Emily Carter's voice was high, bordering on hysterical. "Brad, put the car in park. Put your hands up." "Shut up," Thompson hissed, though his voice lacked its usual venom. It was thin, greedy. "It's a mistake or a prank. Probably a movie shoot. They didn't have permits for this." He was clinging to delusion like a life raft. "Driver of the police cruiser." A voice boomed over a PA system from the lead SUV. It wasn't a request. It was the voice of God. "Turn off the engine. Throw the keys out the window. Keep your hands visible." Inside the cage of the cruiser, Jamal Hayes watched the back of Thompson's neck. He saw the sweat beginning to bead at the hairline. "I'd listen to them, Brad," Jay said calmly. "That's a Special Agent Ethan Riley on the horn. He has a very low tolerance for nonsense." Thompson whipped his head around, his face purple. "You set me up. You set this up." "I tried to show you my ID," Jay replied. "You chose not to look." "Driver now." The PA system boomed again. Thompson's hands shook as he reached for the ignition. He turned the key. The engine died. He dropped the keys out of the window. They clattered onto the asphalt. "Exit the vehicle. Walk backwards toward the sound of my voice. Hands on your head." Thompson opened the door. The heat of the afternoon hit him, but he felt cold. He stepped out. He looked to his left and right. There were at least a dozen agents. They wore heavy plate carriers over navy blue fatigues. They held M4 carbines at the low ready, barrels pointed at the ground, but ready to snap up in a millisecond. These weren't beat cops. These were the FBI's regional SWAT team, the heavy hitters called in for high-risk warrants. Thompson interlaced his fingers behind his head. He started walking backward. "Officer Thompson," a voice spoke from behind him, not over a PA this time, but close. "Stop. Get on your knees." "I'm a police officer," Thompson shouted, finding a scrap of his old bravado. "You can't do this. I have a badge. Get on your knees or you will be put on your knees." Thompson crumbled. He sank to the asphalt, the gravel biting into his uniform pants. 2 agents moved in. They didn't treat him with the professional courtesy usually extended between law enforcement agencies. They treated him like a hostile combatant. One agent grabbed Thompson's left wrist, the other his right. They wrenched his arms down and slapped a pair of flex cuffs, heavy-duty plastic zip ties, onto his wrists. "Hey, that's too tight," Thompson yelped. "Quiet," the agent on his right growled. Meanwhile, a different team moved to the passenger side. Officer Carter was already out of the car crying, her hands high in the air. "I didn't do anything," she sobbed. I told him to check the badge." "Secure her," a tall agent commanded. "Check her weapon." "Is it clear?" "Clear," another agent shouted, removing Carter's sidearm. They didn't cuff her, but they escorted her away from Thompson, separating the witnesses. Then the focus shifted to the back seat of the cruiser. The tall agent, Ethan Riley, approached the rear door. He had red hair that was graying at the temples and a face that looked like it had been carved out of granite. He didn't look happy. He looked apocalyptic. He opened the rear door. "You okay, Jay?" Riley asked, his voice instantly shifting from command shout to a concerned friend. Jay shifted in the plastic seat, offering his back to the door so Riley could reach the handcuffs. "Shoulder's a bit tight. He wrenched it pretty good. But I'm fine." "Key," Riley barked over his shoulder. An agent handed him a universal handcuff key. Riley unlocked the cuffs. Jay stepped out of the cruiser. He rubbed his wrists where red welts were already forming. He adjusted his suit jacket, brushed a speck of dust off his lapel, and took a deep breath of fresh air. He walked over to where Thompson was kneeling. The scene was a tableau of humiliation. Thompson, the king of his little patrol beat, was now kneeling before the man he had called boy minutes ago. Jay looked down at him. He didn't gloat. He didn't smile. He just looked disappointed. "Officer Thompson," Jay said, "I am Special Agent Jamal Hayes. I am the lead investigator on the RICO case targeting the corrupt zoning operations in this district. You have just compromised a long-running federal investigation." Thompson looked up, blinking against the sun. "RICO? What are you talking about? You were just sitting there." "I was waiting for a courier to deliver a package of cash to Councilman Hargrove," Jay said, pointing to the house 3 doors down. "A courier who just drove past us while you were screaming about my registration." Thompson's face went pale. "I didn't know." "Ignorance is not a shield for incompetence," Jay said, "and it certainly isn't a shield for civil rights violations." A black sedan pulled up to the perimeter. The door opened and a man in a charcoal suit stepped out. He moved with the weight of authority that made even the SWAT team straighten up. "That's the ASAC," Riley whispered to Jay. "Assistant Special Agent in Charge Samuel Thorpe." He was listening to the wire. ASAC Thorpe walked straight past the SWAT team, past Carter, and stopped in front of Thompson. Thorpe was a small man with glasses, but his eyes were like lasers. "Get him up," Thorpe ordered the agents. They hauled Thompson to his feet. Thorpe leaned in close. "Officer, in my years with the Bureau, I've heard many things on a wire. But what I heard you say to Agent Hayes today, that was special. That was a career-ending performance." "He resisted," Thompson sputtered, trying to lie one more time. "He refused to exit." Thorpe reached into his pocket and pulled out a digital recorder. He pressed a button. Thompson's voice. "You don't live here. You fit the description. Open this door or I break the window." Jay's voice. "I am a federal agent. My credentials are in my inside jacket pocket. Thompson's voice. I didn't ask for a life story. Get out. Thorpe stopped the recording. He identified himself immediately. You escalated immediately. And then Thorpe pressed the button again. Thompson's voice. Not in my town, boy. The word hung in the air, heavy and ugly. The neighbors were all watching now. Mrs. Harrington was still filming. The landscaping crew had moved closer. Thompson realized with a sinking feeling in his gut that the audio wasn't just on Thorpe's recorder. It was likely on Jay's body wire, his own body camera, if he hadn't conveniently forgotten to turn it on, which he had this time, and potentially recorded by the neighbors. You are going to be processed, Thorpe said coldly, but not by your department. We are taking custody of you under federal statute. You can't arrest a cop for doing his job, Thompson screamed, struggling against the flex cuffs. I have qualified immunity. Jay stepped forward. Qualified immunity protects officials who make reasonable mistakes in the line of duty. It does not protect those who knowingly violate constitutional rights. You saw the badge. You called it fake without verification. That is malice, Brad. That pierces the veil of immunity. Officer Carter, Thorpe called out. Carter jumped. Yes, sir. You suggested running the badge, Thorpe said. We heard that on the wire. You tried to de-escalate. I tried. He wouldn't listen, Carter stammered. That fact is the only reason you aren't in cuffs right now, Thorpe said. But you are going to write a statement. A very long, very detailed statement. And if you leave out a single comma, you will go down with him. Do you understand? Yes, sir. Absolutely, sir. Thompson looked at his partner. Emily, don't tell them anything. Union rep, call the union rep. Carter looked at Thompson. She looked at the FBI agents. She looked at Jay, the man she had almost watched get beaten. Shut up, Brad, she said quietly. The processing of the scene took time. Sycamore Lane was cordoned off with yellow tape that read Federal Crime Scene, which confused the local residents who were used to seeing the blue and white tape of the Oak Brook PD. Thompson had been placed in the back of one of the Suburbans, isolated, air conditioning off. He was sweating, stewing, and waiting. Outside, the dynamic was shifting from tactical to legal. Jay stood by the hood of his Tahoe drinking a bottle of water Riley had given him. His shoulder throbbed and he knew he'd have a massive bruise. But the adrenaline kept the pain distant. So, Riley said, leaning against the fender. The courier's gone, Jay said, shaking his head. Saw the lights. Saw the cruiser. Probably turned around a few blocks back. Hargrove won't get the money today. He'll get spooked. He might start shredding documents. We can get a warrant for Hargrove's place based on the wiretap we already have, Riley suggested. It's messy, but we might salvage it. Maybe, Jay said. He looked at the police cruiser still parked crookedly in the street. But right now, I'm more interested in what we found in Thompson's car. You mean besides your gun? I mean the laptop, Jay said. When he was running my plates, I saw something on his screen. It wasn't the standard NCIC database. Riley frowned. What was it? It looked like a private messaging board, something encrypted. He didn't close it when he jumped out. Riley flagged down a tech agent. Get the data off the cruiser's laptop, clone it now. While the tech team went to work, a new vehicle arrived. It was a standard Oak Brook police chief's car. Chief Edward Harlan was a man in his 60s trying desperately to hold on to a job that was rapidly becoming too complex for him. He walked under the yellow tape, looking like he was walking to his own execution. He approached ASAC Thorpe and Jay. Agent Thorpe, Harlan said, extending a hand that Thorpe ignored. "I got the call. I can't believe this." "Believe it, Chief," Thorpe said. "Your officer assaulted an agent." "I'm sure it was a misunderstanding," Harlan tried, wiping his brow with a handkerchief. "Brad Thompson is a veteran. He's old school. Maybe a bit rough, but he gets results." "Old school?" Jay spoke up. He stepped out from behind Thorpe. Chief Harlan looked at Jay. He saw the dust on the suit, the red marks on the wrists. "This is Agent Hayes," Thorpe introduced. "Chief," Jay said, "your old school officer profiled me, assaulted me, and illegally detained me. But here is the part that is going to interest you." Jay pulled a folded piece of paper from his pocket. A printout the tech agent had just handed him. "We just pulled the logs from Thompson's onboard computer," Jay said. "You know how you guys are supposed to run plates through the state database?" "Of course," Harlan said. "Thompson didn't run my plate through the state database," Jay said. "He ran it through a private Discord server." Harlan blinked. "A what?" "A chat room," Jay explained. "A private group called the Blue Wall. He posted my plate number and a photo of me sitting in the car. He asked the group, got a bogey at 1425 Sycamore Lane. Black guy in a nice car messing with the neighborhood. Green light to harass." Harlan's mouth opened, but no sound came out. And Jay continued, his voice hardening. Someone replied, a user named Watchman. The reply was, "Light him up. Make him run." Jay stepped closer to the chief. "This wasn't just a bad stop, Chief. This was coordinated gang activity operating inside your department. Thompson wasn't checking for warrants. He was checking with his friends if he could have some fun. The implications were nuclear. It meant Thompson wasn't a lone wolf. It meant there was a cell of officers in Oak Brook and maybe other departments sharing targets, encouraging harassment, and bypassing legal protocols." "This is impossible," Harlan whispered. "It's about to be national news," Thorpe said. "We are seizing all servers at your precinct. We are seizing all personal devices of officers on that shift, and we are opening a pattern or practice investigation into the Oak Brook Police Department immediately." Harlan looked at Thompson, who was watching from the window of the Suburban. The chief's face went from shock to fury. He realized his department was about to be gutted because one man couldn't suppress his ego for a few moments. "Can I speak to him?" Harlan asked. "No," Thorpe said. "He is a federal prisoner. You can speak to his lawyer if he can find one." At that moment, a sleek silver Mercedes pulled up to the perimeter. A man in a sharp navy suit got out. He carried a leather briefcase and walked with the confident stride of a man who charged top dollar. "That," Jay said, checking his watch, "would be the lawyer." It was Nathan Sterling, the Nathan Sterling. He was a defense attorney known for taking high-profile cases involving police misconduct, usually defending the cops. He was the go-to fixer for the Fraternal Order of Police. Sterling ducked under the tape, flashing a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Gentlemen, quite a party. I represent Officer Thompson. I demand to see my client immediately." Thorpe blocked his path. "Mr. Sterling, you're fast." "I have a retainer with the union," Sterling said smoothly. "Now, I understand there was friction between agencies. Let's not blow this out of proportion. My client made a judgment call. We can discuss an apology, perhaps a drop charge." Jay laughed. It was a dry, humorless sound. "Mr. Sterling," Jay said, "your client is currently detained under Title 18, United States Code, Section 242 and Section 111 for assault on a federal officer, and we are currently drafting charges for conspiracy to violate civil rights based on digital evidence we just seized." Sterling paused. He looked at Jay, then at the tech agents cloning the laptop. The smile faltered for a fraction of a second. "Conspiracy?" Sterling asked, his voice losing its lilt. "That's a reach, Agent." "Is it?" Jay held up the printout of the chat log. He solicited instructions on whether to harass a citizen based on race from a private network. "That is conspiracy. And since I am a federal agent, that makes it a conspiracy to impede a federal investigation." Sterling snatched the paper. He read it. His eyes narrowed. He was a shark, and he just realized there was blood in the water. But it was his client's blood. "I need a few minutes with him," Sterling said, his tone serious now. "You can have 2, Thorpe said, with an agent present. "Attorney-client privilege," Sterling snapped. "Not when the device used to commit the crime is still in the car he's sitting in," Thorpe countered. "We are securing the scene. You can shout at him through the window." Sterling walked over to the Suburban. Thompson saw him and started pounding on the glass. "Get me out of here, Sterling. They broke my wrist. They kidnapped me." Sterling gestured for the agent to roll the window down a few inches. "Brad," Sterling said, his voice low and hard. "Shut up." "What? You're supposed to help me." "I can't help you if you keep talking," Sterling hissed. "They have the chat logs, Brad. They have the blue wall chats." Thompson stopped pounding. The color drained from his face so fast, he looked like a corpse. "They looked at the laptop?" "Yes," Sterling said. "And because of that, this isn't a traffic stop anymore. It's a RICO case against you." Thompson slumped back against the seat. "But Watchman told me to." Sterling closed his eyes and pinched the bridge of his nose. "Did you just identify a co-conspirator while a federal agent is standing 2 feet away holding a recorder?" The agent standing guard smiled pleasantly. "I'm done," Sterling said, stepping back. "I need to make some calls. I need to see if the union will even cover this. Intentional criminal conspiracy usually voids your coverage, Brad." "You can't leave me!" Thompson screamed as Sterling walked away. Jay watched the lawyer retreat. He turned to Riley. "You know what the worst part is?" "What?" "If he had just checked the badge," Jay said, "I would have let him go with a warning. He would be home eating dinner soon. Now he's going to prison. Calamity," Riley said, spitting on the ground. "We aren't done yet," Jay said, looking down the street at Councilman Hargrove's house. The lights in the councilman's house had just turned off. "The big fish is trying to run. Thompson was just the appetizer." Jay tapped his earpiece. "Tactical, this is Hayes. We are pivoting. The primary target, Hargrove, is likely destroying evidence. We have probable cause based on the exigent circumstances created by the compromised surveillance. We are moving on the house now." "Copy that," the radio crackled. Jay looked at Thompson one last time. "Sit tight, officer. The show is just starting." The transition from a standoff on the street to a full-scale federal raid happened with the terrifying precision of a thunderclap. For Brad Thompson, sitting handcuffed in the back of the FBI Suburban, the world had turned into a surreal nightmare. He watched through the tinted glass as the tactical team reformed. They weren't looking at him anymore. They were looking at the house on Sycamore Lane, the home of Councilman Robert Hargrove. Thompson had waved at Hargrove just the day before. He had told the neighborhood watch meetings that Hargrove was a pillar of the community. He had spent years patrolling this street, effectively acting as Hargrove's unpaid private security guard, chasing off suspicious cars to keep the councilman happy. Now, he watched as Special Agent Jamal Hayes, the man Thompson had tried to humiliate, donned a heavy ballistic vest with FBI in bold yellow letters. Hayes moved with a fluidity that Thompson, with his stiff back and bad knees, had never possessed. "Breaching tools up," Jay commanded, his voice clear over the radio frequency that Thompson could faintly hear from the front seat of the Suburban. "Hargrove is spooked. If he destroys the ledger, we lose the cartel connection. We go hard. We go fast. The team moved up the driveway. Thompson felt a sick feeling in his stomach. Cartel connection? Hargrove was just a zoning guy. He approved strip malls. What was the FBI talking about? Stack up, Jay ordered. 6 agents lined up against the pristine white siding of Hargrove's colonial mansion. Riley was on the ram. FBI search warrant, Jay bellowed. His voice was a weapon, projecting deep and loud, shaking the windows. Open the door! Silence. Hit it! Crack! The sound of the battering ram splintering the solid oak door was sickeningly loud. It took one swing. The door flew inward. Go, go, go! Thompson watched the agents flood into the house. He saw the flash of tactical lights sweeping the foyer. He heard shouting, muffled by the walls but unmistakable in its intensity. Inside the house, chaos reigned. Jay moved through the hallway, his weapon raised. Federal agents, show me your hands! A maid screamed and dropped to the floor in the kitchen. Secure her! Keep moving! Jay signaled to the rear of the house toward the study. That was where the shredder would be. They reached the double doors of the study. They were locked. Ethan, take it. Riley didn't use the ram this time. He used a mule kick, snapping the latch. The doors swung open. Councilman Hargrove was standing by the fireplace. He wasn't shredding documents. He was burning them. A metal wastebasket was in flames, smoke curling up toward the high ceiling. Hargrove, a man usually seen in tailored suits, was in his bathrobe, frantically feeding thick ledgers into the fire. FBI, step away from the fire! Jay shouted. Hargrove looked up, his eyes wild. You can't come in here. I have immunity. I'm an elected official. You're under arrest for money laundering and racketeering. Jay rushed forward. Hargrove tried to throw a black hard drive into the flames. Jay lunged. He didn't tackle the man. He tackled the evidence. Jay's gloved hand snatched the hard drive out of the air inches from the fire. He felt the heat sear his wrist, but he held on. Riley hit Hargrove with a tackle that would have made an NFL highlight reel. The councilman hit the expensive Persian rug with a thud. The wind knocked out of him. Hands behind your back. Stop resisting. I'm not resisting. Hargrove wheezed, his face pressed into the wool. You tried to destroy evidence in front of federal agents, Riley growled, cuffing him. That's obstruction. Add years to the sentence. Jay stood up, clutching the hard drive. He looked at the burning bin. He grabbed a heavy vase of flowers from the desk and dumped the water into the bin. The fire hissed and died, leaving half-burnt papers soggy but legible. Secure the scene, Jay breathed, his heart hammering. Get the fire department to check the chimney for updrafts of loose paper. I want every scrap of ash bagged. Minutes later, the front door opened again. Thompson, still watching from the car, saw the impossible. Councilman Robert Hargrove, the man who controlled the police budget, the man Thompson had idolized as the definition of success, was dragged out in handcuffs. He was weeping. He looked small, pathetic, and guilty. Hargrove saw the police cruiser in the street. He saw Thompson in the back of the FBI truck. Thompson! Hargrove had screamed, his voice cracking. You idiot! You brought them here! You let them write to me! Thompson flinched as if slapped. Jay walked out behind the prisoner, holding the evidence bag containing the hard drive. He walked over to the Suburban where Thompson was being held. He signaled the agent to open the door. The rush of cool air hit Thompson's sweaty face. You see that, Brad? Jay asked, pointing at the weeping councilman. Thompson nodded dumbly. That man has been laundering money for the Sinaloa cartel for years, Jay said. He's been poisoning the city with fentanyl money, washing it through construction projects. We spent a long time building this case. We were waiting for the money drop to catch him red-handed. Jay leaned in, his eyes cold. But because you wanted to play tough guy with a black man in a nice car, the courier got spooked. We missed the money. We almost lost the hard drive. You didn't protect this neighborhood, Brad. You protected a monster. And you almost let him get away. Thompson looked down at his hands bound in plastic, the narrative in his head, that he was the thin blue line, the protector, was shattering. He wasn't the hero. He was the clown who tripped the alarm. I didn't know, Thompson whispered. That, Jay said, slamming the door, is going to be on your tombstone. The interrogation room at the FBI Chicago field office was a study in sensory deprivation. The walls were gray, soundproofing foam. The table was bolted to the floor. The air was frigid, kept intentionally cold to keep suspects uncomfortable and awake. Brad Thompson had been sitting there for quite a while. His handcuffs had been replaced with steel ones, chained to the ring on the table. He was thirsty. He needed to use the bathroom. But mostly he was terrified. The door opened. He expected his lawyer, Nathan Sterling. Instead, Agent Jamal Hayes walked in, followed by ASAC Thorpe. No lawyer. Where is Sterling? Thompson demanded, his voice raspy. I invoke my right to counsel. Jay sat down, placing a thick file on the metal table. Mr. Sterling is currently busy. Busy doing what? He's my lawyer. Actually, Thorpe said, remaining standing, Mr. Sterling represents the Fraternal Order of Police. He represents the union, and as of recently, the union has voted to revoke your membership and legal protection. Thompson felt the blood drain from his face. What? They can't do that. They can, Jay said. There is a clause in your contract regarding conduct unbecoming and criminal malfeasance. When the news broke that you were running a racial profiling ring on a private server, well, the union decided you were too radioactive to touch. They cut you loose, Brad. You're on your own. Thompson slumped. The system he had served, the blue wall he thought would always shield him, had just dropped him off a cliff to save itself. I want a public defender, Thompson whispered. You'll get one, Jay said. But first we're going to listen to a story. Your story. Jay opened the file. He pulled out photos, not of Thompson, but of the chat logs from the laptop. We cracked the encryption on the Blue Wall Discord server, Jay said. It's ugly, Brad. Really ugly. Jokes about beating suspects, competitions on who can write the most bogus tickets. But the worst part is the hierarchy. Jay tapped a photo of a user profile named Watchman. This guy, Jay said. Watchman, he's the ringleader. He tells you who to target. He gave you the order to light me up today. Who is he? Thompson shook his head. I can't tell you. Why not? Thorpe asked. Loyalty to the people who just fired your lawyer, to the people who are letting you take the fall for a federal civil rights violation? You don't understand, Thompson said, his eyes tearing up. If I talk, I'm a rat. I'm dead in prison. A cop in general population is bad. A snitch cop. I won't last long. Jay leaned forward. His voice wasn't angry anymore. It was dangerously soft. Brad, look at the math. You are facing serious time for the deprivation of rights. Another stretch for the gun enhancement. Another for conspiracy. You are looking at a long sentence. You will die in prison anyway. Jay slid a piece of paper across the table. This is a proffer agreement, Jay said. You talk. You tell us who Watchman is. You tell us every officer involved in this ring. In exchange, We recommend a sentence in a minimum security federal camp. We put you in protective custody. You survive." Thompson stared at the paper. It was a lifeline, but it required him to betray the only identity he had left. "I need to know I'm safe," Thompson stammered. "You're only safe if you give us the head of the snake," Jay said. "Who is Watchman?" Thompson closed his eyes. He thought about the barbecue at the precinct. He thought about the man who had clapped him on the back and told him to keep the streets clean. The man who had given him the login to the server. "It's Sergeant Harlan," Thompson's voice cracked. "The chief's brother, the shift sergeant." Jay paused. "Yes," Thompson wept. "And the chief knows. Chief Harlan is overlord in the chat. They run it together. They use the tickets and the arrest to juice the stats to get federal grants. It's all a game." The silence in the room was heavy. This was bigger than a few bad apples. The entire orchard was rotten. "Thorpe," Jay said, not taking his eyes off Thompson. "Get the warrant for the chief." Jay looked back at Thompson. "You did the right thing, Brad. Finally." "Does this mean I can go home?" Thompson asked, a pathetic hope in his eyes. Jay stood up and gathered the files. He looked at the man who had tried to ruin him. He felt a moment of pity, but it was fleeting. "No, Brad," Jay said. "It means you don't die in prison, but you're never going home. Not to the life you had." Jay knocked on the door. "Guard, take him to booking." Later, the federal courthouse in downtown Chicago was besieged by media vans. The headline on the scrolling ticker read, "Oak Brook Police Scandal Sentencing Day." Special Agent Jamal Hayes stood on the steps, adjusting his tie. The wind off the lake was cold, but the sun was bright. Beside him stood Agent Riley and ASAC Thorpe. Inside the courtroom, the final act of the drama had just played out. Brad Thompson stood before the judge. He looked older. His mustache was gone, shaved off in county lockup. His suit was ill-fitting. He had lost weight from stress. The courtroom was packed. In the front row sat his ex-wife. She wasn't there to support him. She was there with her divorce attorney to ensure the lien on his pension was finalized. She wouldn't look at him. Judge Margaret Voss, a stern woman with zero tolerance for corruption, adjusted her glasses. "Mr. Thompson," she said, "you have cooperated with the government. Your testimony was instrumental in the indictment of former Chief Harlan and Sergeant Harlan, both of whom are now facing significant prison time. The court acknowledges this." Thompson nodded, hope rising in his chest. Maybe probation, maybe house arrest. However, the judge continued, her voice hardening like concrete. "You were the spearhead of a culture of terror. You used your badge as a cudgel. You targeted Agent Hayes not because of what he did, but because of who he was. You betrayed the public trust in the most visceral way possible." The judge looked at Jay sitting in the prosecution box. "Agent Hayes, do you have a victim impact statement?" Jay stood up. He walked to the podium. He didn't have notes. "Your Honor, Jay said, "I am a trained federal agent. When Mr. Thompson assaulted me, I knew how to de-escalate. I knew the law. I had a team listening." Jay paused, looking directly at Thompson. "But I keep thinking about the man who sat in that car before me. The teenager driving home from school. The father going to the grocery store. They didn't have a wire. They didn't have a backup team. When they met Officer Thompson, they had no voice. Today, the system worked because I am part of the system. But justice shouldn't require a badge to work. Officer Thompson didn't just break the law. He broke the promise that keeps this society from falling into chaos. He needs to serve as an example that the badge is a heavy weight not a free pass. Jay sat down. The judge nodded. Brad Thompson, I sentence you to years in federal prison, followed by supervised release. You are stripped of your pension. You are permanently barred from holding any position in law enforcement or security. Remand is immediate. The gavel banged. It sounded like a gunshot. No! Thompson cried out as the marshals moved in. Please, I helped you. I helped you. The marshals didn't care. They spun him around, cuffing his hands behind his back. The same sound, click, click, that he had inflicted on Jay. As they walked him out the side door, Thompson looked back. He locked eyes with Jay one last time. There was no anger in Jay's eyes, just a blank, professional indifference. Thompson realized with a crushing finality that he wasn't a villain in Jay's story anymore. He was just paperwork. Outside the courthouse, Jay walked down the steps. The reporters swarmed. Agent Hayes, Agent Hayes, how do you feel about the verdict? Is the FBI investigating other departments? Jay stopped at the microphones. He looked into the cameras. Justice was served today, Jay said. But let's be clear, this wasn't a victory. A police department was dismantled. A city councilman is in jail. A family was destroyed. This was a tragedy that could have been avoided with a few seconds of respect. That's the lesson. Respect the law. Respect the people, or eventually the law will come for you. He stepped back. Riley clapped him on the shoulder. Beer? Yes. Jay smiled. But you're buying. I'm technically still on duty until I file this final report. Deal. They walked away, two men in suits disappearing into the city crowd. Behind them, the news screens flashed the mugshot of Brad Thompson, a man who had everything and lost it all in those critical moments because he couldn't let go of his ego. The karma hadn't just hit. It had cleared the board. And that is how those few minutes of arrogance destroyed a lifetime of service. Brad Thompson thought he was the predator, but he failed to realize he was swimming in an ocean with much bigger sharks. He lost his job, his freedom, and his legacy, all because he judged a book by its cover and didn't bother to read the badge inside. It's a brutal reminder. In the age of cameras and accountability, the truth always has a way of coming out. Thompson's blue wall of silence didn't protect him. It collapsed on top of him. In the end, this story leaves us with a gut-wrenching truth that hits harder than any badge or siren ever could. A single moment of unchecked ego and blind prejudice can unravel an entire lifetime of service, respect, and dignity. Brad Thompson thought he was protecting his neighborhood, but in those few tense minutes, he wasn't upholding the law. He was breaking the very promise that makes society possible. He judged a man not by his character, not by the truth staring him in the face, but by the color of his skin and the car he drove. What followed wasn't just one officer's downfall. It was the painful exposure of how quickly fear, arrogance, and old habits can poison everything we claim to stand for. Yet even in the wreckage, there's a quiet, powerful reminder that shines through. Real justice doesn't need cameras or wires to work, but it does demand something far simpler and far braver. Basic human respect. Respect for the badge. Respect for the person wearing it. Respect for the stranger who might just be doing their job better than you ever could. Because when we strip away the uniforms and the titles, we're all just people trying to make it through the day. One wrong choice, one refusal to see the humanity in someone else, and the life you built can crumble in seconds. Let this be the lesson that stays with you. Pause before you assume. Listen before you act. And never let your pride cost you everything that truly matters. What about you? Have you ever witnessed or experienced a moment where a simple act of respect changed everything, or where its absence destroyed something irreplaceable? Did Brad deserve the sentence he received? Or should it have been even harsher given the larger conspiracy he was part of? And honestly, could you have stayed as calm and composed as Agent Hayes in that situation? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. I read every single one. If this story moved you, hit that like button, smash subscribe, and turn on notifications so you never miss these raw, real-life lessons wrapped in gripping drama. We drop new stories every week. Thanks for watching, and remember, stay humble out there.